cars, welcome back to the shop. Today we're going to work on this Cub Cadet tank. It's a 48 inch. I'll have all the specs up in the title or someplace, maybe listing them out here, the numbers for it. The idler pulley keeps tripping the mowing deck's belt. The reason is because it's kind of sitting slanted like that, and I'm not really positive why it is, because it looks like the arm on top's fine. So we're going to call this video something to the effect of Lars gripes at engineers again, because 90% of the people who do engineering work and design things like this have never even rode one, seen one. They think they know what they're doing about it, and there's always one or two or three parts of this, of a machine, that one or two or three engineers really didn't have the experience of working on it. Now, this idler pulley is mounted from the top. It literally hangs in midair, and it's got a lot of torque on one side. It's got one bolt that comes down into the deck, okay? And they've got this torsion spring that goes back and forth like this. Well, it also allows that spring to lean over, and when it pulls on that pulley, it's pulling on that bar. Therefore, the pulley ends up being cockeyed. Now, I've looked up online. I still got to talk to somebody. I'm going to have to bring this pulley and the nut and everything over to a dealer to figure out, do I need to buy a new one, or is there something I can do that I don't want to? Okay. Now, I've also thought about just taking a round piece of metal, because I think these are 4 1/4, and maybe making it like 4 3/8 or 4 1/2 inch, and just tack welding it to the top, drilling a hole in it so the bolt can go through it, and just tack welding it on top, leaving enough room so I can get down and oil the bearings and stuff. The reason behind that is because this pulley curvature that comes up like this to hold the belt barely covers the belt, the edge of the belt, not even the whole belt. So if you're ready to get on this, if this is something that's been bugging the heck out of you, you've been throwing belts on a Cub Cadet that has one of these overhead pulleys, this might solve your problem. So if you're ready for it, let's get to it. Alright, so the problem that we're having with this mower is this belt keeps slipping off of here. Okay, it's a backwards pulley. I don't know why they only have a tiny little lip here, but for the cast ones they have, you know, a good inch. This here is like maybe a 1/4 of an inch. But this is what the problem is with this pulley system. This is a terrible design by whoever engineered this piece of crap. There's a bolt that goes through the deck. The hole is bigger than the bolt. And as you can see, there's a spring back here, okay? Which puts a lot of tension on that bolt. And as you can see, it likes to move. So where this thing here, when it was brand new, probably set pretty flat, as you start putting tension on it, you can see the pulley starts leaning to the edge. All right, now the 2009 model of this is a 2007 or 8, I think it's 2008. The 2009 model, they actually mounted this pulley to the deck. I don't have any way to do that, all right, because you can't hook the system up, because they have all these little plates and bars and bolts and stuff in places where you wouldn't think they would be, but they are. In order to get this thing off, you need to release the bolt on the bottom of this, and this is a 1 inch socket that goes over top of this, and you can turn this, okay? And there's a bolt on the bottom, I think it's like a 9/16. It's probably going to be pretty caked up. Once you get that out of the way, you need to pull this bar off of here, okay? Because this has got to come back over this in order to get this nut out. The nut that's on the inside of this right here is a 9/16. I'll break this free. Maybe I can get my finger in here and unscrew it, but there's a lot of pressure on this screw because of this spring. Like I said, this is a terrible design. And once the pressure's released, just gotta get this up over this. You can kind of get this off with a finger and get that nut out of there, and then get your hands out of the way and kind of lift this up, because this spring is very high tensile spring. Now that I have this off, I'm going to run to the store and see the Cub Cadet dealer and see if I can get a new spindle or one of these posts. So I went to the store and talked to the Cub Cadet guy, and he said this pulley is looking pretty good. He said this guy here, it normally has threads all the way up. I mean, he had one of these in stock, but you had to buy the pulley with it. He recommended taking some washers and building this up like this. So you get past that point, and then putting this back in, putting these on top, and then putting this ridiculous spring back on here like this. And then on the bottom side, putting a bunch more washers on it with the lock washer, which I have right here, and a new screw. So let's go get this thing cleaned up. So before you put this shoulder bolt back in, now remember, we are using the one that's screwed up. This normally has threads going all the way up to this point at the top. Just a reminder, they've all worn off. And if you remember, in the hole, this goes down in the hole on the deck, and this thing can move around. So we're going to try to fix that. But before you put this back in, make sure you put some grease in the zerk till it comes out of here. It's going to come out really quick, all right? Just spread that up and down your shaft there, and put this back in a hole and spin it around a few times, and make sure that that's got a decent amount of grease in there. Otherwise it should be not loose, but it should have a little bit of tackiness. I think I need a little bit more in here. Like I said, it doesn't take a lot. In fact, I don't even think this took a full squeeze of the zerk gun. It's a little tiny bit of grease, and that will fill this chamber up. Now you put this in here, see how it just slides in real slow, like that? That's what you want. You don't want it just dropping in. And make sure you put some grease around the bottom of this. Alright, this bolt is to put the wheel back on, which we'll get to that, and then this is for the spring right here. So this goes in, locks in, and then you put this onto the nut that's coming out of the deck. Now if you look at the pulley will spin pretty good, okay? You know, this one does. There's not any gravel in there, it's not really knocking around. It's a sealed bearing, but I still recommend taking some like 3-in-1 house oil. You can use 5W30, 10W30, whatever. And I would just put some oil on top of this, and now just let that set and let that oil work its way down in there. You spin a little bit, you know, whichever, but this is just a light lubricant. It's probably equivalent to like a 0W30 motor oil. I don't really know, but this will help out your bearing a bit. As you can see, it's spinning a little easier now. Okay, and then flip it over to the other side and do the same thing. This will make sure that if anything is in here, the oil will bring it to the top. But you can see how that spins a lot easier. It's not a loose bearing, so we're good. And then this bearing, see, it's not even dripping out onto my rag down here. Now, this bearing, this pulley goes inside of here like this. And it takes a washer on it and then a nut. And that's it. And you might need to put this in a set of a vise or have something that you can hang on to this, because you got to get this really tight. Now this was the nut and the washer and the lock nut that went on the bottom of this. I'm just going to take this off and not put these on, but I'm going to show you this nut only screws down to right there. So I always recommend, if you're going to put anything back in, make sure you put, you know, new washer, new lock washer, and now you'll see this nut will spin completely down, okay? All the way down to the lock washer. And if I take these off, you can see this will spin all the way down. Far enough down that we can get it on. That's the end of the threads. This other nut did not go down that far. It went down to about here. So something's really messed up with this. So never put the old nuts back on. So I'm just going to put this on here for a minute just to keep this from falling off. And then this is a 9/16 inch nut. And you really want to make sure this gets tight, because it is a righty-tighty, lefty-loosey kind of thing. And you don't want that coming off. So that spins really well. Now, when I went over to the Cub Cadet place, they didn't have one of these bars, but this thing looked really straight to me. It looked, you know, it's pretty decent. It's a 1/4 inch piece of material, and I wasn't really worried about it being bent. So what's happening inside, I'm going to try to get, you know, so what's happening on the deck is the deck hole is bigger than this little nut here. So it was an ability to move around like this in a circle, and it was also leaning over. Okay, and that's why on the new one of these that the guy had, this area here had threads on it all the way down. Now he recommended, instead of spending, I think just for the pulley and this, what I saw online was like $41 for it. He said the pulley's in perfect condition. He goes, so unless you want to just have an extra pulley laying around, he said I would try this out to see if it works. And that's what I'm doing here, and I'll let you guys know if it works here in a few weeks. Is we're going to put a bunch of washers on here to get past this point, and then I'm going to put washers on the other side with a lock washer and crank this thing down tight enough. I think what has happened over time is with the rust of the other nut and not having proper washers and stuff, I think this thing just kind of loosened up a little bit because it's got a lot of pressure on it. Alright, so it looks like there's 6 holes here, but there's only 3. There's these things here don't go through the deck. I don't know what they're there for. There's a hole here, and there's one right here. And this hole that's closest to you is going to pop up some grass through here. This guy is where the spring goes on. This little hoop on the back, it goes on like that. Alright, so you want to put this bolt up through this first hole, put the spring on, and then put the nut that goes with it on there. And you're going to want to tighten this nut down so it's snug. It's a 9/16 inch. Just so it's snug. You don't want to tighten it hardly anything at all. Now, like I said, there's 3 holes here. This one here is where, inside of this is where this shoulder bolt's going to go in. And we're going to put 3 washers on that shoulder bolt and then drop it down in there. And this is not going to be an easy task. I'm going to tell you that right now because there's a lot to hold on to. What's up? All right. So these 3 washers are going to help support on the deck. And hopefully I can get this thing in here. And yeah, this is really hard if you got really big forearms like I do. It's sticking through, but and if you just keep on playing with this up and down, you will eventually get that into the hole. And then on the other side, put a few washers and then tighten it up. And it's a lot of raising the deck, putting the deck down, unless you get this thing off, which would probably be a lot easier, but this deck is very heavy. So I went over to TSC and got 3 washers, well, 6 washers, 3 for the top and 3 for the bottom, and a lock washer and a nut. I think the nut is it's a 7/16 inch size bolt, and the socket for the bolt on the bottom is somewhere around 18 millimeter. Now, something that I figured out while doing this, anytime you're working with something that has a bolt on the top and the bottom, hold the nut on the bottom, put your 1 inch on top, and turn this thing clockwise, and you'll be able to pull that nut up and get it tight. Now, I don't know what it is in American because I couldn't find anything that was American. I tried 11/16, I tried 3/4, I tried 7/8, all of them. But an 18 millimeter is what the bolt, the actual nut was. You might have a better luck with it, but I did not. So now I'm going to do is I'm going to put a breaker bar on the top here and put a ratchet on the bottom. And I'm going to crank this thing down as tight as I can get it. So far it's not, there it is, now it's moving the nut. So now I'm going to tighten down the spring, which I need an extension on this. Okay. The other thing I don't like about this mower, and to be fair, the mower, the engine, everything is run pretty well. I mean, we did have some parts on the engine blow up on us, and I had to rebuild all that, but most of that was just plastic, and it was due to a faulty gear. Probably the same guy who engineered this engineered that. Alright, so just make sure everything on here is as tight as you can get it. Now, it looks like that pulley is a heck of a lot flatter than it was before. It's a little raised up too, so they put the shims in, which might help. Alright. Next part to be put on is this support for the guards on the side that, if you're anything like us that have one of these little rubber things broke off in about, I don't know, a year, and we never put it back on. But and the main reason I didn't put them back on is because I couldn't find them anyplace. Nobody sells them. They're special order and they are expensive. And make sure when you're putting these nuts on that you spin them down so the square piece hooks into the deck. Get them that tight, because now you're gonna have to lower the deck off just to get a socket in there with an extension. Alright. So this one here, you got to drop the socket in, get it on it, and then put your ratchet on top. Just tighten it till it's snug, nice and tight. Same thing on the other side. All right. Now, gonna put the belt back on the PTO. All right, so the easiest way I figured out how to put these things on is if you had to take your in order to put these on, you have to take the PTO off. But if you're just fixing one, then you can stretch this around this side like this. So you have this going around that front pulley. And then one of these is going to catch the outside of this. And then you're going to tuck both of these guys in together. So you have the hoop and run it behind this pulley. Goes behind the pulley toward the back of the mower. Like this. And the problem is you got to keep it flipped over backwards when you're going that direction. Can you pull that? And don't pull it too hard. It's going to be. Pull it. Get it on?
No.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. And once you get it there, you can take the breaker bar out. And I recommend at this point to either reach underneath and turn the blade both directions, a few turns, to make sure that this is not going to come off. And like I said, you can see this right here. This is barely holding this, and it's at the very top. If this solution doesn't work, I'm going to take this pulley off, and I'm going to get a very thin piece of metal that comes out just a little bit, and I'm going, but not like, probably like an 1/8 inch piece of metal, just something that clears this guy here, and I'm going to tack weld it on top. Because like I said, this is a terrible design. Even up on the top one here for the PTO, this idler, the idler pulley comes out a good 3/4 of an inch. And these are basically the same size belts that are going through them. One's a 1/2 inch, one's 5/8. And why you would do that, I have no idea. All right, so we're done with this. All right, so we got the belt back on with the pulley. Took it for a quick little test run. It seems to be holding at the moment. It was throwing belts left and right. The pulley's actually running pretty flat. Again, if it's something that is going to hold up, I will definitely tell you what happens at the end of the summer, because I'm going to do a review on how this worked. But putting these washers on top and the bottom basically gives you a piece of steel that you're actually bolting to, and it should hold that bolt pretty straight. Now this thing is cranked down pretty tight, and it's got a lock washer, shouldn't move anywhere. So we will see. Also, something else, we've got this spring that goes around the outside of this arm, okay? Putting these washers underneath this may have given it a little bit more tension on that spring. So the spring can't only go compress so much, so it's pushing up too. Plus with the lock washer on the bottom, it's pulling on both ends. Hopefully this works. About 3 weeks since we put the 3 washers on top, 2 washers, and a lock washer on the bottom of that idler pulley. It's staying really flat. Done a lot of mowing. You guys gotta understand, we live on like 11 acres, a little bit somewhere around there, 11 acres, and we mow a lot. Okay, we actually have 3 Z-turns. We run this Z-turn quite a bit. So last couple times we mowed with the Z-turn, it was probably out being used for about 2 to 3 hours and not having a problem with it. So I don't think I have to weld any plates on top of the pulley. I think everything's going to work out great. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe to the channel. There's a lot of useful information out here. If there's a video or something that you have questions about with mowers, whatever, there's a lot more videos coming up on mowers. I got a lot of things I got to fix on some mowers. Please let me know. You're always welcome back here in the shop, and as always, have a nice day.